Hello, and welcome to another episode of the QBD Marketing Pow Wow. My name is Rich Brown, and today we have a very special guest in the studio. Neil Davis from Sterling Networks is with us, and he'll be giving us an insight into effective strategies for building a strong professional network. He'll be talking about why networking is important to help grow your business. And Neil will be sharing his top tips on how you can get the most out of business networking. Welcome, Neil. Thanks for joining us. Can you just tell us a bit more about yourself, your background, how you got into where you are today?
Thanks, Richard, and thanks for having me. So my background is corporate. Started life with Halifax Building Society and came through the ranks there, but wanted to do something for myself. And so we ended up setting up what is now Sterling Networks. And we didn't come straight into networking. We started off with business expos, and that was 14 years ago now. And we find ourselves here today with both Sterling Expos and Sterling Networking.
And the expos have kind of come back in, or in a way, haven't they? Because, tell us a bit more about that you're doing the networking and the expos nowadays and how that works.
I think like most businesses, you start off with an idea. And that idea obviously develops and progresses. And so Tracy, my wife, we started out on our own and we progressed to 14 to 15 business expos in 12 months. They're tiring. Anybody who's done expos knows they're tiring. So we then decided that we couldn't quite manage maybe the 14 to 15. And so we evolved into networking, and gradually one overtook the other. And so today we're predominantly 80-20, 80% networking and 20% business expos.
Well, that's great. So can you tell us a bit more about what is networking and why is it important for businesses to do?
I guess if you look at a dictionary, the classification of networking is when a group of people get together, and therefore, by the very word, the terminology of networking, are talking with each other. In business, when you get a group of businesses together, whatever format or whatever circumstance they find themselves in, they are by definition networking by talking to each other. So to me, business networking is when you have a group of businesses that are together in one location, normally exchanging ideas and exchanging information.
That's great. And could you tell us a bit more about the benefits of that? Like, why would somebody get into networking?
Networking is a very, very cost-effective way of transferring information. And by that, I mean that we all love talking to each other. For example, if it was sport, nobody has a problem if you're a male or a female and you're into sport, talking about sport, ideas, teams, players, whatever. I find business networking very, very similar. We all like talking about our businesses, but I love listening to other businesses talking about what they do. As an example, QBD, for example, you have websites, you talk about digital marketing and all the arms there are in your business. I love listening to that, and therefore I enjoy business networking because I am constantly learning. And as they like to say, every day is a school day.
And where do you see networking fit in that kind of wider marketing mix of the role it can play for a business's marketing?
It's incredibly effective of getting a good message out. Particularly when you're bouncing around with ideas. There isn't a business on the planet that doesn't evolve over time. Progress usually means some level of change in some way, shape or form. And by talking with your peers and talking through things, it may well be that somebody knows more than you do about your ideas, and therefore you may choose or not choose to take a certain path in business. And I found that incredibly beneficial over the last 14 or 15 years or so.
So what makes Sterling Networks different to other networking opportunities available?
So I think the first and foremost is when you get people together in the room, to me, and certainly to Sterling, it's very important that everybody gets an equal opportunity to talk about their business and what they'd like to say. So first things first, we are a single seat company, which means that we don't have more than one person from each market sector. So, for example, if you're in IT, we only have one IT company and so on. So we then have a 60-second round, which means that everybody gets an opportunity to talk about their business for 60 seconds only. We actually time that, which sounds a bit draconian, but people that know. And so it makes a room. If you've got 25 people in the room, if you didn't time it, you could have some people taking maybe 3 or 4 minutes and others that would take 20 seconds. And what that does, it means that people that are not so confident are able to talk about their business knowing that they've got the same equal opportunity as everybody else in the room. So that makes us different.
Yeah.
We also then have a typical networking meeting. We have what we call the engine room break. And that's a 10-minute, I call it half time, but it's called the engine room of networking. And it gives people an opportunity then to follow up on the very people they've been listening to and have a conversation. We call that making a one-to-one. And it's the only thing that Sterling Networks asks people to do. And all of these actions are a way of helping people connect with each other, because that's what it's about: connecting, learning, starting the conversation. So that 10-minute interval, that 10-minute break, if you like, gives people an opportunity to metaphorically, you get their diaries, make that one-to-one. But on top of that, it's always good. You can't really talk about your business in just 60 seconds. There's always takeaways, isn't there? But we then have a member presentation. And every meeting, we then give each member in turn a 10-minute presentation that they can then talk about his or her business and get their points across, what's relevant to them today. And that gives the whole room an opportunity to really get to know that person. And whether they use slides, whether they use PowerPoint or even a clipboard, or some people just stand there and talk. And sometimes those are the best, believe it or not.
Yeah,
so
I can imagine, yes.
That would be a typical meeting. And then we just finish the meeting off by just going quickly around the room, and anybody that would like to talk about their activity. Usually that would involve meeting with another member. Usually that would be talking about the good stuff that comes out that maybe you wouldn't in a normal walk of life have the opportunity to say. And that to me is a networking meeting.
No, that's great. And I, having been to a lot of Sterling Networks myself, I know that engine room break is such a key part to it, because you hear about everybody in the room and you think, oh, I'd like to go and speak to them. What are a couple of the almost success stories that you've seen with the many members that you've got with Sterling Networks?
Wow. There's been so many nice ones, and I guess it's down to me that I love seeing businesses grow. Because of my background in corporate, where sometimes it can be a bit stifling. I think the thing about networking and what I enjoy most about our particular business is when you see somebody come in as a newbie. And by that, I mean somebody that's maybe got a new business. They could be a mature person, not necessarily a young person. So it could be anybody. And they've started their own business, and they come into a room full of fellow business owners that have all got an established business and they're new. And like everybody else, where on earth do I start? Yeah. Well, to me, it all starts with a conversation. So if they start that conversation and then it carries on to one-to-one meeting and they get their first sale, that is so exciting. And it's just seeing somebody thinking, wow, they're on their way.
You must love getting those stories when someone says, oh, I've got my first lead, or...
Love it. I mean, take QBD, for example. You're sat in front of me. I met you a long, long time ago, and I've seen QBD grow, and that's grown to a much bigger organisation than it was 10 years ago. Yeah. There's an IT company that springs to mind that started out on his own, and he was a classic case of had experience, and now that guy's employing people and got a team together and has got some really good clients. And those sort of stories that they just keep you going, really. They make you realise that there are so many opportunities out there, and networking helps develop those opportunities. And that's what gets me up in the morning.
No, that's really great. Thanks for sharing that. And so what are some of the effective strategies that you've seen for someone if they're looking to build up their professional network?
I think when you're building a professional network, it's important to embrace as many what I call strings to the bow as possible, marketing opportunities, I tend to call them. And that would mean that there isn't just one secret way of doing something. I've yet to meet the person that has got that proverbial silver bullet. So it's about everything, isn't it? So, for example, you guys apply digital marketing. So digital marketing, what does that mean? To me, it means everything. It means things like LinkedIn, it means Facebook, Instagram, all the stuff that you can get and show pictures on and show content on. Networking is another arm to that. It's not the arm, but it's another important arm. And then when you have things like business expos where you can show your wares and you have longer than a standard networking meeting, you have maybe all day. And then you have other things like business lunches, and they can be social. For example, we run something called Mix and Mingle, which is simply drinks after work, just for a 2-hour period where 50 to 80 people can get together and do things a lot more casually. And for that, there isn't facilitated networking, it's what we call open networking. So all these different ways of producing and developing a business are really important.
Do you see there's a slightly different type of almost person that will come to those different events because it's different structures? So you mentioned the mix and mingle. The people that come to that, what's the difference, or do you see a difference between those people and people that would come to a traditional
there is
breakfast?
there is a difference. There's a hardcore, I would say 50% that would go to anything, and I think that's good. Certainly we would do that, and we do that, and go to a variety of events because it's about getting out across as many channels, opportunities as possible. There are some people that perhaps are a little bit more nervous, or perhaps the facilitated networking doesn't suit them. And maybe they would rather come to, let's say, an expo. So, for example, we were in a Cheltenham Expo at Cheltenham Racecourse. And it's a big place, Cheltenham Racecourse.
Sure is.
We obviously don't hire the whole place, that's for sure. But people find it much easier when they've got their own stand and their own banners and they've got their own laptops and whatever, and they feel more comfortable perhaps in that environment than they would in just going into a networking meeting room. So it does take all sorts, and definitely we find that there's a strong variation on the events that we run, and as no pun intended, but the mix and mingling is different. And it's another string to the bow, and it does take all these different channels as far as I'm concerned.
You mentioned earlier about Sterling asking people to set up one-to-ones and having those follow-up meetings. Why is that? Why is that important? What value do one-to-ones add to a business?
So speaking personally in my life, the most success that I've had, whether it's a corporate or own business, is when I'm sat down talking to somebody and I find out about that person and that person finds out about me if it was a previous employer. And so much comes out of the art of conversation. So if it's a question of sitting down and spending an hour, metaphorically, it's usually half an hour of me, half an hour of them. It doesn't quite work that way. Of course it doesn't. But generally speaking, 50-50, give and take. And it's about exploring opportunities. Let's be honest, people buy from people. So the marketing is great and that gets you to that meeting. But once you sit down with that person, it's about how you get on. Is there chemistry there? If you like somebody, there's a very good chance if they've got a good product, you're going to buy from them. So ultimately, a one-to-one, I suppose, if you really want to take it to the nth degree, is a sales opportunity. I love sales opportunities.
Don't we all? Something else I find interesting is the ethos that Sterling creates and that importance of kind of being a valued member of the group. And why is that important? Why is it important to add value to your own group? And how do people go about that?
So if I start with Sterling's values, because they're really important, having grown up with a really good corporate, but weren't necessarily, they were great on the surface, but didn't necessarily look after their people. How many times have we all heard that? I was determined that if I was fortunate to have my own business, that I could look after the people that not only that work with the team, the Sterling team, but actually are members and customers as well. Why wouldn't I? And so we started out by saying we are going to make sure that we treat everybody in a way that we would like to be treated ourselves. And that's where it stems from. And every single day, without fail, we always think we hold ourselves to account. Have we looked after that person? Is there anything more we could do for that person? And the cynical people would say, yeah, but there's got to be a reason. Why would you go out of your way to introduce somebody? Why would you go out of your way to making that introduction? Why would you? Well, it's quite simple, really. We get an awful lot of satisfaction from seeing that. Of course, we're all in business to make money. But if you can make money with a smile on your face and actually have people enjoying what they do, surely that's got to be a good path to take.
Once someone's made a connection with someone at a networking event, how do you see and how do you recommend people kind of carry that connection on and kind of nurture that relationship into becoming a partnership?
So, interesting question. That is where, thank goodness, everybody is different and people are really, really different. And I don't think it really matters what the training, what the education, what the background is, young or old, male, female. It doesn't really matter. Everybody has their own way in which they'd like to conduct themselves and would like to discuss, present their business. And so once people have had that one-to-one, it is definitely down to the individual how they proceed. Yes, we run how to maximize your networking. We run a free for training for our Sterling members. And the idea of that is to discuss just that, how to sit down and have a proper one-to-one. Because let's be honest, some people would just take the opportunity to talk at you for 59 minutes about themselves and not ask you. And that is clearly not a successful way of having a one-to-one. So it's about listening. It's about asking the right questions from somebody else. It really is about going into that with a mindset. And my mindset would be, what can I give? There is an expression out there called give as gain.
Yeah.
And I passionately believe in that. If you go to a networking meeting, go to a one-to-one or any meeting with somebody else, we believe that the way to go into that is with a healthy mindset of saying, what can I do for that person? And I will often find before I go to a meeting, I'll research that person. I'll find out what they're looking to do, what their business is about, so that I can, A, create a good one-to-one, but B, if I can help somebody, in the end, I believe what goes around comes around.
Yeah, I think that's such a big thing, is that how can I help these people? How can I help this person? Definitely. So with all the networking that you've done, what are some of the challenges that you see that people face in networking?
I'm a very simple person, and I believe in KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And if you're not sure, then don't talk about something you're not sure, or if you feel that you're developing a relationship with the person that you're having a conversation with, be honest. It amazes me. And should we talk about politics and about being honest? But if everybody was just honest with each other, the world would be a much simpler place. Yeah. And I go into a meeting, and I honestly believe that with our business ethics and through integrity, that if you keep it honest and keep it simple as you can, if somebody wants to know more and more detail, what a great buying signal. So talking about business, what a great buying signal. But naturally, you want that meeting, as you would with any meeting, whether it's family, friends, whatever, to go well. Using the sport analogy, I played rugby and cricket for a number of years. The game was never won on a Saturday. It was won on a Tuesday night when it's filthy, rainy, horrible night, hammering a scrummager machine. So it's the preparation going into that meeting that often reflects. And it's funny, isn't it? The more people put in, the more people get out.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about the kind of those startup businesses that may be slightly nervous coming into a networking environment. What would you say to them if they're a bit shy of coming into a room full of strangers and they're not really sure what to do? What sort of advice could you give them?
I think first things first, we have a phrase that we love to use. And no, it's not out of the training manual. And it just says, whether you're coming to a meeting or you've just joined Sterling as an affiliated networker, a very warm welcome awaits you.
Yeah.
That's genuine, though. We really mean that. Our group leaders are not paid to do the role. Our group leaders are there to help facilitate the meeting. And as part of that facilitation, that means making sure that everybody is comfortable. And that could be the newest person that hasn't got a clue what they should or shouldn't be doing, or the most experienced. It comes to us all at some point. I don't know. Bad journey to the office, traffic, children, dog. It could be anything, couldn't it? But we feel that if you come into that environment, it should feel safe and secure. And if you feel welcomed and it's explained to you what to expect, and we do that before you even get there. We send you the emails. We talk to you on the phone before you even turn up at that meeting. We make sure that you know where you're going. We make sure that you know what to expect when you get there. And let's face it, preparation is a big part of it. So we prepare people before they even get into that environment.
And with the rise of technology, particularly Zoom, Teams, these different platforms, how has that virtual networking thing that's evolved affected Sterling, and how has that affected face-to-face networking?
So If we were talking about AI, which is relatively new to us, we're still learning. And I have no doubt that it will help our business and company like us, everybody else. So Zoom and Teams helped save our company. When COVID hit and lockdown, we're a face-to-face organisation and we obviously couldn't meet face-to-face. What that did as well, though, there was a very much a team spirit. So around the country, people would get onto their PC, sadly in the beginning, some in their pajamas without realising that the camera was on. But it did create a lot of humour. And I personally, I think it was fabulous because it really showed that people were real.
Yeah.
And although I'd have preferred not to have had lockdown, of course, like everybody else, it happened. And so Zoom and Teams, I think, taught a lot of people that you can actually be more efficient. And so prior to COVID, you might jump in your car and drive 100 miles to go and see somebody. You try and pre-qualify on the telephone, but it's not always that easy. People are busy. People haven't got time. Yeah, come and see me. And some of that has now been saved. Yeah. Or some of that's gone, whichever way you look at it. And so I probably have 1 or 2 meetings a week over Teams, which has saved me a lot of time. If it's usually an hour there, an hour back, and sometimes, in my case, because we are a nationwide organisation, it can be a 3 or 4 hour journey, which I would have made that.
Yeah, it can certainly make more time efficient, can't it?
Yeah.
And where are Teams and Zoom calls now with Sterling? Is there still online meetings or are you all back face-to-face?
We've only got one meeting now online, and I think that's probably down to us as opposed to the technology. It's because we believe in meetings. Everything we do is around people ultimately having that one-to-one. Everything we do is based on people talking to each other, seeing each other. And you can do great groundwork over Teams and Zoom. And if you have met somebody, there's no reason why you can't continue that business relationship. And we find we do that. But in my book, and certainly in my own organisation, we very much believe in face-to-face. So wherever possible, we would choose to meet face-to-face.
Yeah. What was that like when we went back to face-to-face? What was that like getting back in those rooms and seeing all those connections?
Oh, do you know what? I'd love to put the button out and say, rah, 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 it was unbelievable. But it didn't quite happen that way, as things in life tend not to. If I skipped over the hard stuff, like the venues were hit as hard as we were, exactly the same. People, everybody in every different business had some level of confrontation, had to go back and almost restart. Well, they did. It was a restart. So chefs weren't in kitchens. So hotels didn't have staff, things like that. So venues weren't as readily available as the government guidelines would lead you to believe. So it was hard starting back, and people did lose the art of conversation. People did lose confidence. And really, here we are sort of 4 years later, and people are just about beginning to get back to something like normal, if that word ever exists.
Yeah. So what are some of the top tips you would give someone who are looking to get into networking?
I think one of my sort of phrases that I'm famous for was just get out there and do it. So I'm sure there's a lot of companies I've just subbed up their taglines for that. Yeah. But there's nothing better, in my opinion, if you're proud of your business and what you do, why wouldn't you want to go out and talk to other business owners about what you do? And so a top tip for me, several top tips really, be proud of what you do. Be proud of your organisation. Make sure you present yourself in the right way. If you were going to get married, you'd make sure that you're wearing a suit or whatever attire you think's appropriate. Your wife would probably want a white wedding dress or something. So when you go into a business meeting, go dressed for business. If you've not met somebody before, first impressions, we all know what first impressions are. That applies to any business, not just networking. But networking, people really are meeting you and your business for the first time. So my tip is always treat that as the most important meeting you're ever going to go to, because you do not know what comes out of it. Go to a meeting with an open mind. So many people start a conversation and have a closed mind about what they've gone there for. They've gone there because they want to sell their widget or sell their service. And whenever I go to a meeting, and maybe that's my upbringing from corporate, maybe it's not, but I go there to thinking, I wonder what that person has to offer. I wonder what I can learn today from that person. If you go there with that proverbial blank piece of paper, it's incredible how you can fill that paper. So in terms of the word top tip, go there with an open mind. Go there prepared to listen. Go there prepared to learn. And yes, if somebody asks you the question, great, then answer back, of course. But ultimately, find out as much as you can from that person, because it's incredibly beneficial.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And so looking forwards, what's on the horizon? Where's networking going? What do you think the future holds for business networking?
So business networking as a title conjures up a myriad of different things. It does with Sterling anyway. I can only speak for my own brand when it comes to in that respect, but we've got 10 different arms now to Sterling Networks.
Wow.
And you asked me a question earlier about what if you get somebody that's a newbie? What if you get someone more experienced? We've got CEOs in Sterling that run teams of 25 to 50 people, and you're thinking, why would that person want to get up at 6:30 in the morning to come and have conversations? It's because they've got an open mindset and they're hungry to grow and develop their business. If you've got a hunger to grow and develop, why wouldn't you want more information? So with Sterling Networks, certainly we've introduced things like Sterling Boardrooms, Sterling Business Lunches. I've already mentioned things like Mix and Mingle, a varied way of business networking. And to my mind, to answer your question directly, that's where business networking is going, is to meet across a variety of platforms, even if it's online, even though we've only got one group left online, I still believe that's got a place. And across a variety of platforms to make sure that everybody can really get involved and maximise their own potential.
It's been great to hear all your thoughts today on networking. Clearly, you're very passionate about business networking. But how do you see professional networking and digital marketing working together? What do you think the benefits are?
Let me give you an example of how I think that works. So let's take QBD, for example. So we talk about digital marketing, we talk about programming, we talk about websites, we talk about e-commerce site. But the most important thing surely is to turn up and tell people about what it is that you do. And I go back to my one-to-ones, I go back to my networking in the room. You guys have got tons of seats with Sterling, so we are speaking from experience. But a good practical example is when you're in a room, there may be somebody in that room, and we keep mentioning the startup, or we keep mentioning that senior person that's been doing what they're doing or not doing what they're doing for years. But the very fact that you're there, and whether that's in York, whether it's in Bristol, whether it's in Ipswich, whether it's in Worcestershire, it doesn't matter where you are, there'll be somebody somewhere that doesn't know everything about you. So they will know parts of you, and maybe they've seen you on digital media, be it on a social media platform, be it on Instagram or be it on Facebook. And they're probably intrigued, but maybe wouldn't have reached out to you if you hadn't have been in front of them. So one of my mantras is turn up to that networking meeting, turn up and be seen, be heard, have those one-to-ones. And people, I am sure, would I've seen it myself, they will talk to you about, well, what is digital marketing? And maybe they're frightened off by price. Maybe they're frightened that, oh, I'm too small or I'm too big to get involved in this. But by being there in front of them, you have the opportunity to put their mind at rest. And everybody has a tailor-made solution. So if we're talking about websites, if we're talking about digital marketing, whatever it is we're talking about, by being in the room, QBD have the opportunity to explain what they do, and more importantly, the potential client will know far more about it with word of mouth rather than yet another page to read. And I think that turning up, being seen, being heard is far more important than the written word, even though you need the written word as well. So in all fairness, if you can get yourself out there, business networking, AI, digital marketing, all the things that go on at the moment, it's a combination. And really, by getting out there and turning up at meetings and pressing the flesh, as people like to say, is a great way of achieving that.
Well, that's been great. Thanks, Neil, for sharing all those thoughts today and how people can benefit from business networking. It's been great to have you.
Lovely. Thanks for having me, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again to Neil for joining us today. It's been great to have you in the studio and for you to share your experience with us on the show. You can find out more about Sterling on their website, and the link will be in the show notes. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast so others can enjoy our content on digital marketing. I look forward to joining you again on the QBD Marketing Pow Wow.